Make them legal, make us rich. To hear the White House tell it, we fix immigration, we fix this economy, and create millions of jobs, and suddenly this recovery is off to the races. Hadley, Heath says, more like off their rockers, joining Hadley and Michelle Fields and Steve Laser. So, Hadley, you're not buying this Nirvana argument. Why not?
Well, I think it's correct that more immigration increases the labor supply, and that's a good thing for our economy. That's a good thing for economic growth. But this issue of immigration does not operate in a vacuum. There are many other issues at work. And if we ultimately create more eligibility and expand eligibility for our very liberal entitlement state, that's not good for our economy. So there are different principles at work here.
Michelle, he's more or less saying here, and it's if you're going to pitch this, is a good way to pitch it, it's good for you. You benefit from this, so be for this. What do you think?
Well, look, one of the problems that we have right here in this country is Social Security. And the reason why is because the ratio of workers to retirees has fallen tremendously. In 1950, there were 16 workers for every one retiree. Now there's only 3 workers for every one retiree. And the reason why is because we have an aging population. We need young workers. Immigrants and undocumented immigrants tend to be from 18 to 35 years old, and they come here to work, not to live off of the state. And so I think we need to embrace them and say that, yeah, we actually need these people in order for programs like Social Security to work.
But you're assuming that that young population dwarfs the older population that would similarly tap those benefits.
Well, no. Look, if you allow them a probationary type status, they're not going to be able to receive benefits for years and years. We're talking maybe a decade. So to say that they're just coming here and they're just going to immediately sign up for food stamps is not true.
What do you make of this whole argument that it's an economic argument, interest, Steve, for this to happen?
Well, I guess, first of all, I'm shocked I agree with Michelle, but I think she's absolutely right. You know, the numbers have been run on this. The Congressional Budget Office, nonpartisan, did some numbers on this. The immigration reform bill that exists in the Senate would increase revenue by $459 billion over 10 years.
How would they know when they couldn't even identify how many illegals we had?
Well, you know, everything's an estimate, you know, but
right,
they say that
you don't even know where they're working, how they're working, how much they're making when they're working. But go ahead. It's the only numbers we have.
It's the only numbers we have. And it would increase benefits over those same 10 years by about $259 billion, but that leaves us about $200 billion extra in revenue. So I think this is a great thing for us. I mean, and what's the alternative? I mean, we either have to eventually give these folks a pathway to citizenship or send them home. We can't send them home. If we sent them home, it would collapse, for instance, the real estate market and other things. So we have to do one way or the other. I think this is the best choice in really what is not a good series of choices that we have before us. And both parties are at fault over the last 50 years. It's not a partisan issue.
Well, no, both parties have punted on this. But, Hadley, I'm wondering, aren't critics of this plan also worrying that it emboldens those who want to come here illegally, also get a pass, also be granted amnesty, also take advantage of a country that is willing to take all in and doesn't really want to deal with the hassle of kicking anybody out, so that it creates an even bigger problem? What do you make of that?
Well, I've seen so many studies that have to deal with the economic impact of immigration. And you're right, Neil, that one of the problems with these studies, although they reach dramatically different conclusions, is that they have to make assumptions about the types of workers who are coming here, how long they're going to stay, what their contribution may be, and how many of them may become eligible for state assistance. So the many, many variables make me cast some doubt on any study that I see about a 10-year or 20-year economic impact study.
We do know that many of the illegals here, Michelle, do work very hard. They're not sucking off the system because they can't. So we do know that the core that are here work their heinies off. Now, the fear is that by granting them amnesty or granting them a path to citizenship, whatever you want to call it, those who follow them might be less inclined to be as industrious. What do you make of that?
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, that provides a perverse incentive. But the thing is we're not going to ship 11 million people back to their country. We need to do something, which is why we should have a probationary type status for them.
But do you think, Michelle, that by that definition that Republicans are shooting themselves in the foot or looking callous when they argue this, or does it hurt them? What?
Well, I think that, you know, a lot of the objections to immigration aren't necessarily objections to immigration per se, but objections to the entitlement state. So I feel like, you know, we hear a lot about compromise. Well, why don't Republicans say, hey, you Democrats, you want immigration reform? Well, look, we need to cut the entitlement state, and let's work together and find a compromise. There needs to be, we can't just give it all to them. We need to cut the entitlement state, because that is the problem here.
Well, I can barely do this thing. If you want to wed the two together, Steve, geez, I don't know. I mean, but anyway, where's this going?
Well, I think if Republicans want to work with Democrats, there's a sector of the Democratic Party that would like to work with them very much on preventing additional workers from coming here after this deal is done, and that's organized labor. I don't know how much Republicans would want to work with organized labor under any circumstances, but organized labor is worried that this will cause more undocumented immigrants to come here if a deal is struck.
But wouldn't they sign them up?
No. So, I mean, you know, this is a situation where they're worried about the labor market getting so large that wages would fall. So they're very much interested in not having an additional wave of undocumented to come after this deal is done.
But real quickly, guys, do you think we're going to get immigration reform this year? What do you think, Steve?
I do not think so.
Michelle?
I don't think so.
Hadley?
No.
All right, on that bright note. Too much in love to admit they're too cheap. Guys apparently wrestling with their women and their wallets because a new poll shows more men want women to chip in when they go out. Apparently, women are not as keen about this. To Michelle and Hadley and Steve on what they make of this. Hadley?
Oh, man, you're going to call me old-fashioned, Neil, but I still think that a man should pay. If he asks you out on a date, if it's the first date, then I expect a man to pay. Because, listen, we've got a lot of customs and sort of unspoken rules in the dating world, and while many things can change about gender roles and many things can change about the economy, there's still some value to having those customs in place.
What if you ask the guy?
I probably wouldn't do that, Neil.
Well, you probably don't need to. Michelle, what do you make of that?
Men these days, Neil, absolutely. The woman is not supposed to pay. If you're courting a lady, you're the one who's supposed to pay. If you're the one who's initiating this date, which is usually the males initiating the date, they're the ones who have to pay for it. I understand we're in a bad economy. We have 7.6% unemployment, but there's no excuse. There's no excuse to make the woman pay.
Yeah, but the guys aren't doing that great. You guys actually in this workforce are doing better. So pony up, you cheapskates. What do you think of that?
No, I'm going to agree with Hadley. There are certain, I'm old-fashioned. There are certain traditions. I think that you should treat a woman to a nice date and not make her pay.
Maybe the second date, Steve, then make him pay. What do you make of this?
I'm going to get myself in so much trouble. My expectation is, when I go out on a date with a young lady, is that the first 3 dates, I'm probably going to pay.
Right.
Okay? But if by the second or third date, they're not offering, I won't let them. But if they're not at least offering by the second or third date, I'm going to think this person's selfish. They're, you know, why?
That's very
you know,
interesting.
Why? But you know, look, if you're a guy and you can't express that, then you've
got problems.
Then you've got problems.
Then you're
if you don't have the confidence,
then the women should wonder about, well, why isn't he asking me to pay? Because he seems like a wuss. Right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
There are ways, though, to go on a nice date without having to spend a lot of money. Going to a free museum, going to the park, making food yourself, making dinner. There are ways to save money without making the woman pay.
You sound like Alan Alda with a dress. I cannot believe you just said that. But Hadley, I would that was a joke. I didn't want you to get you angry, and nor do I want to get Mr. Alda. But I will say this. What are the expectations after the first few dates? To Steve's point here, that, you know, after a while you are then, let's say, in simpatico, you both really get along, you know it's promising, then what's wrong with saying, all right, you know, pay up, Hadley?
There's nothing wrong. And I think after it's established that you're in a dating relationship, as women, we should offer to pay. Because, look, in this economy, a study showed that in urban areas, young, single, childless women are actually out-earning their male peers by about 8%. So
yeah, but you're still holding them out, these poor, you know, underpaid SOBs. You're still forcing them to pay up and bringing them further, you know, into poverty.
As a social custom, though, sometimes the question of did the man pay on that first outing helps to distinguish between a casual meal among friends and what's really a date. So I think that these social customs that we have in place, again, they help signal to us where a relationship stands and help us avoid some of the awkwardness that comes with that unsureness.
Well, see, I was such a loser at school. I would offer posters at school saying, "We'll pay for life." But nothing. But Michelle, I mean, the economic environment has changed, right? I mean, women are doing a lot better now in a lot of areas and industries. They're doing much better. So aren't the old rules gone? Aren't the kind of customs that we had in the early days gone?
No, I mean, I think once you get into a serious relationship, then you can talk about, you know, splitting the check and paying for certain things. But I think on the first few dates, absolutely not. The man is supposed to pay.
So where's the cutoff for you, Michelle? I mean, you're stringing the guy along for how long before you say, ta-ta?
Maybe this is why I'm single.
Thank you, Steve.
No, I mean, I think once you get into a serious relationship, that's when you start paying for things.
39%. You see, hoping the men don't ask them to pay.
Well,
What connivers, huh?
You know, the other side of this is I would never hold it against a woman if she said that she wanted to pay for the first couple of things. So there's no downside.
They hold it against you for asking them, apparently.
Even here in liberal
Yes.
New York City.
Really? Where was this done, guys? It was a nationwide poll, right? Larry, do we know? Where was this poll? It was nationwide. It wasn't just New York City, because in New York City.
You would think,
Okay.
but no.
Look, at the end of the day, Neil, if the economy is just too hard and it's too hard to go on those fancy dates, I would just remind people, urge them, what's in somebody's heart is much more important at the end of the day than what's in their
You
wallet.
don't mean it. I'll tell you, if I had a dime for every woman who said
Lies.
that, I'd have a lot of dimes.
I really believe it.
Just like the
I
same
really
women
do.
who told me, Neil, he has a great personality, but no way in hell I'd go out with him again. So I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. I don't think you subscribe to that view. I think you could be lying on national TV, Hadley.
I went to see a movie this weekend. I bought the tickets for me and my boyfriend. So
Did
look,
you really?
yeah, I really did.
Who paid for the popcorn, stuff like that?
We didn't have any popcorn.
He struck me as very healthy. That would you held that up like ransom, right, Michelle? I could see her saying, "Well, you know what? I'm not gonna add anything else to this. You want the popcorn, get it yourself." But Michelle, even in this day and age, you're saying chivalry is not dead.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important. And like I said, look, there are ways to go out on dates without having to spend a lot of money. So there's no excuse for not paying for the woman. I feel like the traditions like this are very important for,
Michelle, I love you dearly, but the first date with you, if the guy were to go to McDonald's and just go to a bridge or something, say, hey, let's look at the bridge, look at the city, you wouldn't buy that at all. This guy would be like a memory.
No, you could take me out to a nice museum, walk in the park. I would like that. And that doesn't cost very much money. You don't have to take me to McDonald's, but you could, cook a little
right.
something, take
I
me
need
to
a
the
pen.
park.
Yeah.
To get this.
I think I took my future wife
feel
at
like
the
you're
time
not
to roller
buying this.
derby. I don't know, it was something like that.
But I think we're all in agreement that early in a relationship, that's what most of the people who responded to the poll said. Most of the men still said they'd prefer to pay for the first date.
Yeah,
So
but Steve was saying, cough up after a while, for God's sake. And
least
I agree with the
contribute.
liberal.
At least contribute.
At
After
least we could
I
do.
agree with
We're
that, too.
all a big society. Everyone contributes. Absolutely. All right, on Steve's side on this one.